Another beyond frustrating loss in Knicks land. One could rightfully argue the most frustrating yet, which is so hard to fathom. But when you look at the amount of frustrating games that the Knicks have already dealt with throughout their first 11, it's all but surprising, unfortunately, that another game where the defense showed up too little too late, the offense finally kickstarting things after having a lifeless first half. This Knicks team just needed some consistency on the defensive front, and they certainly did not get that. Faltering here to the Chicago Bulls by a final score of 124 to 123 in our latest Knicks post-game breakdown presented by BetUS, America's #1 sportsbook, that we're about to get into in a second, everybody. But how you doing, Knicks fans? For those that don't know me, my name is Tyler Ward, better known as Wardy NYM, where I cover the Mets, Major League Baseball as a whole here on the YouTube platform at Wardy NYM. You guys have maybe checked out my work in the Bleacher Report app covering MLB-wide coverage, as well as SNY, WFAN, New York Post-related segments there, reoccurring. Check out all my respective work. Thank you so much in advance for doing so. And tonight, I'm breaking down our post-game segment as my man Richie Melora, who is the host of the Knicks media platform here, that many of you guys are probably wondering, where's Richie at? Don't worry, he'll be back for next game. We are on an alternate schedule. Pretty much every other game, I will be giving my initial reactions and breakdowns of post-game coverage, and Richie will be here for the other half. That way, we can consistently give you Knicks coverage after every single game throughout the course of the 82-game season, and then eventually heading into postseason play. And I know it's early. I know we're 11 games in, but a Knicks team below 500 in the fashion, the way that they have, or Karl Anthony Towns is doing everything humanly possible to make this Knicks team prevail and to make this Knicks team to leg out some victories, still we cannot get the job done because the same reoccurring issues have transpired pretty much on a nightly basis for the Knicks, outside of a fantastic biggest team win yet just a night prior there in Philly against the 76ers. That's always a great thing, beating up on Philly, but it's always a terrible thing losing a game in this dramatic fashion. You were down 22 points, you rally all the way back, you get a 17-0 run there, essentially heading into the fourth quarter, and you still drop this one in a heartbreaking fashion. Why? Because Josh Hart has the most frustrating foul there from the three that you see on Kobe White. He nails all of them. Jalen Brunson rim and somehow out, not down and in. This was a beyond frustrating Knicks game to get into that we're going to cover to a T. My initial reactions and biggest takeaways: how can Tom Thibodeau properly adjust, if he's going to properly adjust, for the Knicks games going forward? Because they have a quick turnaround here just a couple days from now, if I'm not mistaken. They're going to be facing the Brooklyn Nets, unless I was looking at the schedule wrong. Either way, they got a quick turnaround, and we're very aware of that. So let's break down the biggest aspects of frustration and how the Knicks can build for the better here, outside of what was a fantastic game from guys like Karl Anthony Towns. Cameron Payne, without question, his best game off the bench, but in a very Knicks fashion this season, the trend has continued. When one man has stepped up off the bench, no one else has really provided any protection on the offensive end whatsoever, and that has certainly hurt this Knicks team. Along with boys on back-to-back nights, absolutely deflated on the defensive end, and it showed in their piss-poor transition game throughout the course of this one. But guys, before we get into it all, let me see your initial reactions, comments down below to the Knicks losing to the Bulls by a final score 124 to 123. Let's shout out our amazing sponsor briefly here, folks, at BetUS, that has you covered with all your sports betting needs. Head over to betus.com.pa today, where you guys can get in on the action the way that I'm getting in on the action with UFC 309 this weekend. For any of my fight fans out there, speaking of MSG, the Knicks might have faltered there, but John Jones was there pre-game that we saw on the court, hanging out with Josh Hart and others. John Jones will be defending his heavyweight title and going toe-to-toe there with Stipe Miocic, that we're going to see in a massive veteran heavyweight matchup there, the headliner of UFC 309. I'm doing a 3-pick parlay here with our awesome friends at BetUS. I'm hammering John Jones straight there on the money line to win his fight outright there against Stipe Miocic. Charles Oliveira, who for my fight fans who know him very well, is a spider monkey, and I think he's going to handle Michael Chandler really well. Chandler's been a stud. He's been in the fight game for a long time. He's fought the best of the best, but he has consistently also lost to the best of the best. I believe that's going to continue here against Charles DuBronx Oliveira. Bo Nickel, who's a high riser in the UFC, especially according to Dana White there, a former D1 stud with Penn State, is going toe-to-toe with Paul Craig. This feels like another big win here that we're going to see for Bo Nickel. So I'm hammering a $50 parlay that's going to win me roughly $40, so hopefully a $90 turnout should all these three fights come out victorious. Guys, feel free to take retail these bets, but make sure if you do, you bet responsibly. We're awesome friends here at BetUS. But let's hop back into this one, everybody. And I apologize, I actually realized I'm on the wrong slide. That slide I just showed you was from my Mets coverage. So now let's talk about the Knicks here. And let's break down to a T, quarter by quarter, what transpired in this one. Because in the first, the Knicks again were off guns blazing early. They get Jalen Brunson with the early three, which was fantastic to see. Cat right after. Again, Cat with the early offense. We are far from shocked there. Karl-Anthony Towns with a 46-point burger of a night, and yet the Knicks don't prevail in this one. That continues the frustration of what we've seen already a lot so far this season. And unfortunately, guys, in OG Anunoby, who I love after a dominant game last night against Philly, had a really frustrating transition game that we saw heading into the second half. Yes, he had some slams late, but still, I was frustrated in moments with OG, which is hard to say because we all love OG Anunoby. The same way that Josh Hart, we could tell, was gassed night, a little beat up there. And after having a huge triple-double for the Knicks against the 76ers last night, wasn't exactly to the same impact. Had some nice layups there to really help get the boys going there. By the boys, I don't only mean the Knicks entirely, but I mean also the fans around them and a fantastic crowd at Madison Square Garden. But the Knicks, after getting off to some really nice shots here against the Bulls, with nonsensical, non-contested threes hammered by the Bulls in the quarter, that the Knicks were doing nothing of whatsoever and led them to faltering, already down 7 points here that we saw at around 2:30 to play or so in this matchup. And it continued where the Knicks were completely outscored and outfooled in this one in their first quarter, 29-22. They already have 4 fouls going against them early, and just some piss-poor early shot selection by this Knicks team. They were 2 steps behind, and the Bulls were 2 steps ahead. Zach LaVine had himself a fantastic game. Vucevic had himself some nice drives, even though one-on-one Karl-Anthony Towns was an absolute man-possessed that we saw yet again. And when we look at Kobe White, who was an absolute thorn in the Knicks side yet again, had himself a really strong bounce-back season last year. Again, the former UNC product, who I certainly despise as a Duke fan growing up. I'm not a bandwagon, I promise. I've been a fan of Duke since I was in elementary school. My teacher randomly assigned us teams in March Madness, so whoever won March Madness that year got to pick what we did for the last week of school. I picked out a hat that said Duke. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And that further led to my love and fandom with guys, of course, that we see in RJ Barrett, former New York Knick, Zion Williamson, going down the list, way down the list, Kyrie Irving during his time with Duke, which we're not going to talk about. I'm getting on a tangent, Wardy, so let's reel back in here. Knicks are down here through the first quarter. So as we get to the second, again, Cat is hot early and often. He gets some quick 5 points there. First that we see on a nice 2, and then a huge 3. He already has 10 in the early goings here as we're entering the second quarter. From there, we would see Josh Giddey nail a massive 3 there for the Bulls to give them a continued 8-point lead. Karl-Anthony Towns responds not too long later with an emphatic slam that we saw to really get the momentum finally started in Knicks' favor and get some fans up and out of their seat here that we would see before the end of the first half. Cam Payne, looking for his first breakout game off this Knicks bench, does exactly that with his broken shot. Yes, I'm still wondering how Cam Payne hits threes the way he does during his time with the Sixers and other teams. I was always telling myself, this man has one of the most broken shots in NBA history. At least that's how it feels, but it works every single time. So shame on me for saying it's broken. It's unique is what it is, and it certainly worked in the Knicks' favor as he went 3 for 3 from 3 that we saw, and he was fantastic overall, giving the Knicks in this entire matchup. Cam Payne, final total 11 points in 17 minutes, 4 for 4 from the field, 3 for 3 from 3. We're never going to complain about that. Cam, thank you for your services. From there, we then saw Mr. Josh Hart get kicked in the you-know-what, unfortunately. Needed a breather. He stayed in the game, though. Again, hadn't needed a breather, get out for a second, then he came back in. Jalen Brunson then drains a massive 3 for the Knicks to still make it an 8-point game. At that point, Jalen Brunson had 16 points, but some costly early turnovers that we saw. Some nonsensical plays early in the first half of this game, not only for Brunson, but other aspects of this offense, Mikal Bridges as well, where they were just sloppy and 2 steps behind, where the Bulls, as I mentioned, were 2 steps ahead. From there, Cat drained himself another massive 3, which we greatly appreciated. Again, we saw him already making things still an 11-point game, but Cat is still killing it. But what really killed it was after that, right away, we saw Chicago respond, like, again, without a problem. Heading into the half, the Chicago Bulls were up 59-47. The Knicks' consistent turnovers, along with being 2 steps behind on their transition game and not getting enough from guys on their bench, not named Cameron Payne, certainly led to their demise in this one. When you have Miles McBride as well with it, over 20 points, over 20 minutes tonight, but only 2 points to work with. That is just not going to get it done. I love Deuce just as much as you guys do, and we know when he's hot, he's brilliant. He was certainly not in this matchup, and the Knicks needed more from their bench. Again, well, you're not going to show any reliability in what we currently have in Matt Ryan, who's known for his corner 3-esque ability. When we look at Jericho Sims, which continues to just be a simple pylon, a man that's in the way that does anything but, in my opinion, help this Knicks team for the better. Things need to change about this bench rotation. I know that injuries go directly in hand with this, with guys like Precious Achiuwa especially, but something has to change sooner rather than later, because it's continuing to be the demise of this Knicks team. There's no denying that. That continues to hurt them. And then to add insult to injury, if you're not named Karl-Anthony Towns, the Knicks didn't get a whole lot on the 3-ball in this matchup. And with how defined the 3-ball is each and every game, you need to make sure that you're spreading the wealth a little bit. And even while the Knicks, again, had fantastic point production, it wasn't for a lack of effort. As we then went into the second half on the offensive end, it still wasn't enough for this Knicks team, because as we got into the third, a lot of big moments for the Knicks where the momentum was really starting to go in their favor. Cal with an and one made it at that point a 15-point game, 18 points for Karl-Anthony Towns in the early goings of the third quarter. Williams would respond right away there for Chicago with a massive 3, already his 3rd of the game. He was nailing shots early and often. Unfortunately, Cat with an and one again, but unfortunately misses. And this was another frustrating aspect of this entire game. Karl-Anthony Towns, a 46-point night, absolutely brilliant. 6 threes in this matchup, yet who was on the court longer than anyone else post-game tonight? It was Karl-Anthony Towns, because of the free throws that he missed, because they were so costly. And if he did not miss as many as he did, leading to the Knicks' free throw percentage of around 66%, which is simply despicable. That cannot happen. That's disgusting. He really took his time post-game tonight, hanging out at MSG on court, working on his free throws, and I commend him greatly for doing that with a man who had roughly 50 points on the night for the Knicks. But still, this is what led to the frustration. It's not only the lack of transition game by the Knicks. It's not only the depth, not named Cameron Payne, being non-existent on the bench because Thibodeau's being stubborn with his playing time and just doesn't have the trust or faith in the guys that are currently available off the bench for him, at least as of now. It's a mix-up of that along with this Knicks team not getting some key free throws when they needed down the stretch here as we ultimately got to the fourth quarter. But before we got to the fourth, as we stated in the third here, the Knicks were nippy on the heels. They're trying to make this a tighter game than what it is at this point. Bridges with a fall away too, and again, unfortunately, it was a costly turnover 2 seconds later, so it's not like it mattered. Colby with a massive 3 there for Chicago. Vucevic with the slam makes it a 21-point lead against the Knicks at this point. But this is where the tide started to change. Just as the Bulls had, I believe, at most 22-point lead in this game there in the third quarter, Cam Payne drains a massive 3, and just like that, they really start to nip away and find themselves rallying back. At that point, it goes from being 22 points, so we're fast-forwarding already, to being within 10, 11-point range. From there, we would see our man Josh Hart get a massive bank shot, which makes it a 9-point game, a single-digit game here for the New York Knicks. And mind you, this is where they already have 13 straight points. That 13 straight point run will go to a 17-0 run there throughout the final couple minutes of this one. Tremendous run there that we would see from Mr. Bridges with a foul line jumper, makes it a 7-point game. Then Karl-Anthony Towns throws it down big time to make it a 5-point game. A 17-0 run in the last 4 minutes or so, eventually heading into the fourth quarter. Heading into the fourth after that emphatic slam by Karl-Anthony Towns with just 5 seconds left. The Knicks are down by 5, 90-85. And as we get into the fourth, they would have themselves an early lead before we know it. Bridges pulls up with the jumper, and that makes it a 4-point game. Cam Payne and Towns go back-to-back on the 3-ball to make it a 1-point game here against Chicago yet again. From there, Hart gives the Knicks a massive lead there with a layup. Again, the Garden's rocking. It's going bananas. But it was still in the early goings here of the fourth, and that's where you had cautious optimism. You knew there was still plenty of time left. How are the Knicks going to look down the stretch in the final 3.5, 4 minutes of this game? That would be telling on not only their health, their longevity, and their ability to handle back-to-back. I give them a lot of credit for rallying back the way that the Knicks did this, but still, the same flaws that they have had countlessly throughout the course of the first 11 games this season held true yet again with their lack of defense, their lack of proper transition game, and their lack of proper usage on their bench, which is combined with not only guys that are unavailable due due to injury, but also Tom Thibodeau's stubbornness to really try to spread the wealth a bit outside what we saw in Deuce McBride and campaign, who balled out unlike anyone else on the bench for this Knicks team. Karl-Anthony Towns continued to be the story. He tied it up at this point, 37 points on the night for Cat. Before you know it, it becomes 40 points. Why? Because he drains another 3-ball, gives the Knicks the 1-point lead here in the fourth. Then Cat with a layup ties it up with 1:10 to play, and at that point, it's a 119 to 119 ball game between the two here. Brunson with a massive 2 gives the Knicks the lead with just 36.8 seconds to go for his first points in the fourth quarter. Jalen Brunson, who had around 16-18 in the first half, was non-existent on the offensive front the second half, and that also hurt this Knicks team. I understand that Karl-Anthony Towns, this was his night. That's why we saw Jalen Brunson try to be more the facilitator. He has sacrificed the offensive upside that comes with his game at times, knowing that Karl-Anthony Towns is the man in town right now and is playing like a top 5 and not top 10 player in the NBA at the moment. Not to denounce how good Jalen Brunson is as one of the best guards in the game when he is right, but he has not necessarily had the start to the season that he's hoped for, that most Knicks fans have hoped for, and as he is properly trying to transition and adjust his game, working with a big man he's never worked with before, the best offensive big man that you could ever ask for, and Karl-Anthony Towns. But Jalen, his lack of offense down the stretch, again, we appreciate his shots there for sure, and I'm not blaming him for the rim and out. Again, that's just poor luck at the end of the day for the final shot of this game. But Brunson, you were hoping to see some more offensive upside out of. Mikal Bridges certainly showed some upside throughout the course of this game as well, which I appreciated. But no less there, we would see Brunson, again, his 2 gave the Knicks the lead. Cat, again, was pretty cooked for a minute there. A knee-on-knee injury there with Vucevic, his knee hitting on the inside of Cat's. They were battling out 1-on-1 this entire game. Vucevic, again, had himself some points, but when you see Karl-Anthony Towns draining roughly 50, there's only so much you can do if you're Mr. Nikola Vucevic. And because of that reason, Cat was pretty banged up, still hanging in there, however, but the lack of free throws killed the Knicks here towards the end. Brunson gives the Knicks lead that we saw with just 4 seconds left, and then that costly, so costly call from Josh Hart to Colby White there. What a backbreaker that was. Prior to that, we saw Zach LaVine himself getting a little bit chippy with each other, and man, oh man, that was the killer of this game. Colby White drains all 3 free throws. That would be the difference maker in this matchup between the two, because again, 22 for 27 there we saw from free throw, 81.5%. Getting the job done was the Chicago Bulls. The Knicks, 12 for 18, 66.7% is not going to get it done. From 3, we saw 40.5% to the Bulls, 38.9%. So it wasn't for a lack of effort there entirely. From the field as well, the Knicks were efficient at 51%, but the Bulls were better at roughly 54%. Total rebounds were completely even across the board, 40-40 apiece. This Knicks team had a lot of things going right on the offensive end, simply put, but on the defensive end was the same exact woes that we have seen countless times with this Knicks team throughout the first 10-11 games of this regular season. So Knicks fans, my question to each and every one of you is, what do you think Tom Thibodeau needs to do better to properly adjust this Knicks team to get them back in a groove and hopefully get some more production depth-wise out of this bench outside of one measly player? Because again, it feels like every single game with this Knicks team, even with some of the success that they have had, has been with just one man stepping up off the bench. Where has been that unity from this club the way that we have seen on the offensive end? Because look, I understand that the Knicks didn't have their best game tonight, but still there was a balance of wealth on the offensive end. OG Anunoby with a 4.99 rebounds, 2 assists. Josh Hart, 6 points after having himself a much better game the night prior in Philly with a triple-double, 6, 8, and 6. Karl-Anthony Towns, 46 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists. Another monstrous night for Karl-Anthony Towns, where the Knicks have nothing to show for it on the win front. Mikal Bridges, 20 points that we see, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. Jalen Brunson, 24, 3 and 8. Miles McBride, 2 points. Again, not going to get it done in 23 minutes. Jericho Sims, Matt Ryan barely getting points. Again, when you look at guys like Pacome Dadier, among others, you have to wonder, At what point are the Knicks going to really try to dabble more in the youth of what they have there, along with how long is it going to take for guys and Precious Achua, among others, to get back out there, because they're desperately needed for this Knicks team. Remember at one point when people deemed Precious Achua as a throw-in trade with the big blockbuster with Toronto, with RJ Barrett, Mr. Emmanuel Quickly, OG Anunoby, and right away Precious, the New York native Mets fan, shout out to him as well. He was doing fantastic things for the Knicks right away whenever called upon, whatever situation he needed to be in. The Knicks need a man like him right here, right now, and I cannot wait to see him return. But ultimately, I cannot wait to see this Knicks team just get in a groove, finally get their defense and transition game figured out, because right now it just continues to look as brutal as ever on a night-by-night basis. I understand it's coming off of a back-to-back, but I also understand now with the expectations this Knicks team has, they simply need to be better. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Knicks fans, that's what I'm going to leave you with, everybody. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Your biggest takeaway from this heartbreaking, frustrating, one-point loss here to the Chicago Bulls, just waking up a little too late, was this Knicks offense and a defense that just was not there to show. Until we get to the next game, everybody, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your night, evening, whenever you're watching this. Thank you so much for chiming into our latest Knicks post-game show presented by BetUS. I'll see you all in the next one, if not my man Richie. Have a great one, folks. And as always, no matter what, let's go Knicks, baby. Peace out, everybody.